Hey everyone, today we'll be focusing on organic chemistry grade 12. I hope you have your pens, pencils or notepads ready for this. We'll be covering classification of hydrocarbons, names of hydrocarbons, summary of homologous series, examples of organic molecules. This is your bright brainiac tutor, and I tell you now, you have to just put on your mind cap because you're about to learn stuff you never knew. And if you knew, you're just gonna know more. Okay, so hydrocarbons are actually just compounds that consist out of hydrogen and carbon only. So it's just carbon and hydrocarbon that get together, and they are actually the ones that gave birth to organic chemistry. There are two types of hydrocarbons now. So now there's saturated and then there's unsaturated. Saturated compounds are compounds in which there are no multiple bonds between the carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon chains. In unsaturated compounds, there are actually double bonds, and in propane there's a triple bond. Alkynes and ethenes, in an ethene there's a double bond between the carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon chain. Well, we have 9 that we have to know now, the name of the series, the homologous series. We have to know what alkanes, alkenes, alkynes, haloalkane, alcohols, aldehydes, ketones, carboxylic acids, and esters are. We also have to know the general formulae for them, or for general formula for alkane is CnH2n plus 2. So if you have one carbon, you will have times 2 plus 2 number of hydrogens. If you have one carbon in an alkene, you will have times 2 the number of hydrogens. If you have one carbon in an alkyne, you will have times 2 minus 2 hydrogen atoms. In a haloalkane, there's a halogen. So if you have one carbon, you will have times 2 plus 1 hydrogen atoms. That X is for your halogen. In an alcohol, you will have, if you have one carbon, you will have times 2 plus 2 hydrogen atoms plus oxygen. In an aldehyde, you will have times 1. If you have one carbon atoms, you will have times 2 hydrogens, and you will have oxygen. In ketone, you will have, if you have one carbon, you will have 2 times hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Carboxylic acid, you will have, if you have one carbon, you will have times 2, and you have oxygen, you have 2 oxygen atoms. And in an ester, you also have 2 oxygen atoms, and the difference between a carboxylic acid and an ester, although they may have the same general formulae, a ester has a double bond, right? Esters have a double bond. That's the difference between the two. Examples of alkanes. There's methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, hexane, heptane, octane, nonane, decane. Methane means there's 1 carbon atom, ethane means there's 2 carbon atoms, propane means there's 3, butane means there's 4, pentane means there's 5, hexane means that there's 6, heptane means that there's 7, octane means that there's 8, nonane means that there's 9, decane means that there's 10 carbon atoms. So this is what you have to know now. If you do remember, the prefixes will actually tell you the amount of carbon atoms that an alkane has. So now we will be practicing multiple choice questions, and I hope you are ready for them. To which homologous series does a compound with the molecular formula of CH12, C6H12O2 belong? What we do notice is that a ketone, that this formula has six carbon atoms and double the hydrogen atoms, plus it also has 2 oxygens. And the ketone, these are our options, right? A ketone does not have 2 oxygens. Alcohol does not have 2 oxygens. Aldehyde does not have 2 oxygens. The only one that has 2 oxygens here is a carboxylic acid. So the right answer for this is carboxylic acids, because if you do notice from the general formulae of the others, the oxygen, there's only 1 atom of oxygen. And this one has 2. So that's how you tackle this multiple choice question. Which one of the following is the general formula for the alkanes? CnH2n. That is not an alkane, that is an alkene. Because if you would draw that, you would actually see that there's a double bond for that to exist. This one is CnH2n minus 2. This is also not an alkane because there's 2 times minus 2, the number of carbon atoms. This one has times 2 plus 2, the number of carbon atoms in the hydrogens. So that one is obviously the correct one. D is obviously wrong because it has oxygen, and alkanes do not have oxygens. Alkanes are saturated. A is not saturated. B is also not saturated. And D, even though it may be saturated, it cannot be an alkane because it has oxygen. C is right and D is incorrect. For the third multiple choice question, they ask us which one of the following combinations are both unsaturated hydrocarbons. What are unsaturated hydrocarbons? Unsaturated hydrocarbons are hydrocarbons where there are multiple bonds between the carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon chain. So you will have to draw them down if you want to actually understand or actually just get a picture of all of this. Or you can think of their formulae. Well, ethane is a alkane. It ends in ane, so that makes it an alkane. And ethene is an alkene, which is an unsaturated hydrocarbon. But ethane is not unsaturated, it is saturated. Ethene is also not saturated, and ethine is also not saturated. Ethane is saturated. Ethanol, saturated between the carbon atoms, there are no multiple bonds. Ethanoic acid, there are no multiple bonds, but ethene, there are. So the obvious answer for this is B, because ethene is unsaturated and ethine is also unsaturated. They both have ethene has a double bond between the carbon atoms, and ethine has a triple bond between the carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon chain. So C is incorrect and D is also incorrect. Which of the following is the structural formula of the functional group of the ketones? What do we know about the ketones? We know that the ketones have a double bond between the carbon and an oxygen. That's what we know of it. But there's also carbon atoms that are next to it. It is a chain of hydrocarbons, but the carbon atoms connected to the oxygen, that's a double bond, must only be connected to the carbon and the oxygen. So A is incorrect, C is correct. As you can see from this, there's carbon carbon and oxygen. The one in the middle is actually connected with a double bond to an oxygen. Okay, which one of the functional formulae below represents an alkane? Okay, what do we know about an alkane? The general formula is CN H2N plus 2. So there must be 2 times plus 2 amount of hydrogens as there is carbons. So for A, in A there's 2 carbons and 4 hydrogens. That is an exact double of the carbon atoms, so it is incorrect. B, it is a double 2 because it's literally just the number of carbon atoms multiplied by 2. Double, so it's also incorrect. C is C14H30. There's 14 carbons and there's 30 hydrogens. So if you look at this, you can see that 14 times 2 is 28, and 28 times 2 will give you 30. So C will be your alkane. So the most important thing you will have to notice and you have to know here is the general formulae, because it's the one that will help you identify what an alkane, alkene, or any series is. It is the one that will help you identify them. You will have to understand, you will have to know the general formulae and the structural formulae of each and every homologous series. We are your Bright Brainiac tutors, and we hope we helped you. We hope that you understood everything we said. If you did not, feel free to contact our Bright Brainiac tutors for more assistance.